Book Summary: Losing My Virginity by Richard Branson. Let's enjoy the video. Please subscribing to my channel for more great content like this. You'll be notified when I upload new videos. Losing My Virginity by Richard Branson is a captivating autobiography that chronicles his remarkable journey from a young entrepreneur to the founder of the Virgin Group. Here's a narrative summary, along with 5 real case examples. Balloon adventures and determination. Branson crash-landed his hot air balloon in the Algerian desert during a round-the-world trip. Undeterred, he remained determined to circle the globe. Lesson: persistence and resilience are essential traits for success. Music industry triumphs. Branson signed iconic artists like the Sex Pistols, Janet Jackson, the Rolling Stones, Boy George, and Phil Collins to Virgin Records. Lesson: bold decisions and a passion for music fueled his success. Battle with British Airways. When British Airways waged a dirty tricks campaign against Virgin Atlantic, Branson fought back and successfully sued the airline. Lesson: standing up for your business and principles matters. Swimming to safety. During a violent storm off the coast of Mexico, Branson swam 2 miles to safety. Lesson: courage and adaptability are crucial in challenging situations. Virgin Records rescue. Branson sold Virgin Records to save Virgin Atlantic, demonstrating strategic thinking and commitment. Lesson: sacrifices may be necessary to protect your larger vision. Branson's adventurous spirit, resilience, and unconventional approach to business make this memoir an inspiring read for aspiring entrepreneurs and anyone seeking valuable life lessons. Losing My Virginity is the world's best-selling autobiography by businessman Richard Branson. He details his lucrative adventures, starting from dropping out of school, starting a record label, and crossing the Atlantic by speedboat. The book brilliantly portrays the role of intelligence, determination, and risk-taking on the road to becoming one of the richest men in the world. This book is especially for those interested in billionaire Richard Branson, the founder of one of the most influential and successful corporations of the 20th century, who ran an airline and founded many businesses. World records for skydiving and sea crossing. If you do not know this talented businessman, you will still find the book extremely interesting, as throughout is the story of how the eccentric CEO broke all the rules in business and still brilliantly created remarkable results. Respect. How did Richard Branson build his big business? Richard Branson owns many companies. He runs an airline, record stores, a record label, nightclubs, and a railroad. He also set a world record with hot air balloons. How does he do all this? Branson is special. He loves adventure and is good at business. He uses his imagination and never gives up. This helped him succeed even when things went wrong. In his book Road to the Great Sea, Branson talks about his life. He tells how he became honest, brave, and strong-willed. These traits helped him change the music and flying businesses. Branson's life is exciting. His stories show that not following rules can help in business and life. The book tells about how his family gave him challenges as a boy, how he flew to Baghdad to save people from Saddam Hussein, how he bought an island, how he flew across the Pacific Ocean in a balloon with little fuel. Branson says, "I never do business just for money. If that's your only goal, don't do it. A business should be fun, interesting, and make you think creatively." Overcoming the limit. Richard Branson was born in 1950. His family liked to do things their own way. They encouraged him to try hard things from a young age. This made Branson love adventure and challenges. When Branson was 11, his mother told him to bike 50 miles to visit family. She didn't give him directions. This taught him to be tough and find his way. When he came back, instead of praise, he had to cut wood. His family often gave him hard tasks. Once, when he was 4, his aunt bet him money that he couldn't learn to swim in 2 weeks. Branson tried hard but couldn't swim in the sea. On the way home, Branson saw a river. He stopped the car, took off his clothes, and jumped in. At first, he sank. But he kept moving his legs and arms, and he started to swim. His family cheered, and his aunt waved the money she had bet. When Branson got out of the water, his dad hugged him and got wet too. His dad was so happy that he jumped in the water too, diving near his son. Branson didn't do well in school. He was independent and had dyslexia. So, he found other things he liked. He and his friend Johnny started a magazine called Student. At first, it was just a complaint about school. But it grew to cover student life and big topics. Making a magazine was hard. They needed money to print it. They had to find people to buy ads in a magazine that didn't exist yet. Branson found a smart way to get ads. He told one bank that their rival had already bought an ad. This trick worked, and they got their first £250. Branson and Johnny cared more about the magazine than school. They left school and moved to London. They worked in a small room with other helpers. Even though Branson had dyslexia, which made school hard, he worked a lot on the magazine. He wrote and edited articles. They wanted to write about big world events. They even sent people to report on wars in Biafra and Vietnam. But music was the main focus of Student. They had interviews with famous musicians and wrote about concerts. Branson says, to succeed, you need to do things with lots of energy. Established Virgin Mail Order. Branson got into the music business. He saw that people loved records and only bought them from big stores. These stores were expensive, but people had no choice. Branson had a new idea. He thought people would like to buy records by mail for less money. He talked about this with his student magazine team. They needed a name for this new business. They wanted a name that everyone would like, not just students. Someone suggested Virgin because they were all new to this business. So, Virgin Mail Order started. They put an ad in the last student magazine. It got more orders and money than ever before. The best part was that people paid before they got the records. This gave Virgin money to buy the records to sell. Branson's friend Nick became the accountant. They planned how to buy records cheaply from record companies and send them to customers. This way, Virgin could sell records for less than stores. Virgin Mail Order did very well in the 1970s. But then they had a problem. In January 1971, the post office workers went on strike. This meant customers couldn't send money or get their records. Virgin record stores became very popular. In 1971, big stores didn't care much about rock music. They were more interested in light, fun music. When the post office strike happened, Virgin had to open their own record store. They wanted it to be like their student magazine, a place where people could buy records and also talk about music. They found an empty floor above a shoe store on Oxford Street. They couldn't pay rent, so Branson convinced the owner to let them use it for free. He said Virgin's customers might also shop in the shoe store. Virgin's first store did very well. They decided to open more stores. They also kept their mail order business ready for when the strike ended. By Christmas 1972, Virgin had 14 stores in England. The stores were popular, but they had a problem. People liked the stores so much, they used them for dates instead of buying records. To fix this, Virgin made the stores brighter and moved the cash register to the front. This reminded people they were in a shop, not a club. It worked. After 2 months, they started selling more records. Branson realized he could make more money by opening a recording studio and starting a record label. He saw that most studios were too strict and boring for rock music. In 1971, at 21, Branson bought an old country house to make a fun recording studio. The house cost £30,000, which was a lot of money. He got loans from a bank and his aunt to buy it. Branson also started Virgin Records. This let them find artists, record them, and sell their records in Virgin stores. Their first artist was Mike Oldfield. His record, Tubular Bells, sold 13 million copies and made Virgin very successful. In 1976, Virgin needed new artists. They signed the Sex Pistols, a controversial punk band. The band's album caused problems. One Virgin store manager was arrested for displaying the album title, which had a rude word. Branson went to court to defend the album. He brought a language expert who said the rude word wasn't really rude. The expert turned out to be a bishop, which surprised everyone. The case was dropped, and Virgin won. The Sex Pistols were a famous punk rock band in the late 1970s. In the UK, many people thought they were dangerous. They couldn't perform in some places. In the US, they weren't as controversial, but they inspired many other bands. In 1976, Virgin was having money problems. Punk music was getting popular, so they wanted to sign a new punk band. In May 1977, the Sex Pistols manager, Malcolm McLaren, signed with Virgin. He hoped Virgin would quickly drop the band for bad behavior, like other record labels had done. Virgin signed the Sex Pistols just in time to release their song God Save the Queen during Queen Elizabeth's 25th anniversary. The band played near the British Parliament, causing a big fuss. McLaren was arrested. But Virgin didn't have shareholders who could complain about the band's behavior. So McLaren's plan to end the contract didn't work. In 1977, the Sex Pistols album Nevermind the Bollocks, Here's the Sex Pistols came out. Virgin stores promoted it a lot. This caused problems because of the rude word in the title. Branson had to go to court to defend the album title. He brought a language expert who said the rude word wasn't really rude. The expert turned out to be a bishop, which surprised everyone. Because of this, Virgin won the case. In 1978, Branson lived in New York with Joan, his future wife. He heard about buying islands and pretended to be interested to get a free trip. They visited Necker Island, which cost £3 million. Branson jokingly offered £150,000. Later, Branson learned the owner needed to sell quickly. He bought the island for £180,000, much less than the asking price. On this trip, Branson also got the idea for Virgin Airways when his flight was cancelled. In 1980, Virgin Music was losing money. Branson kept signing new artists, which worried his financial officer. The officer left, and Branson became full owner of the struggling company. Then, CDs became popular. This helped Virgin sell more music, especially Mike Oldfield's records. The new artists Branson signed, like the Human League and Phil Collins, became very successful. Virgin made a lot of money in 1982 and 1983. In 1984, Branson started Virgin Airways. It was difficult and nearly bankrupted Virgin. They had problems with permits, engines, and money. Branson had to collect money from his stores to keep the airline going. Eventually, it became successful. In 1984 and 1986, Branson tried to sail across the Atlantic Ocean to set a record. The first attempt failed when their boat sank. In the second attempt, they had engine problems but got help from an RAF plane. They set a new record, crossing in 3 days, 8 hours, and 31 minutes. With skillful negotiation skills, Branson bought a beautiful tropical island for £180,000. In 1978, Branson lived in New York, because he wanted to be with Joan, his future wife, in the process of divorcing her ex-husband there. After completing the process, Branson was asked if he would name the company after the Virgin Island. Despite the fact that this is not the case, the island is definitely a perfect spot for a couple to enjoy. He had heard that if a person was really interested in buying an island, the real estate offices would house the person in a villa and provide a helicopter to fly around the island. So Branson contacted a real estate agent and told him he was looking for a place for Virgin music artists to relax and record. Joan and Branson flew to the island, where they were greeted by the office on one of the most secluded and beautiful islands, Necker Island. Although he had no intention of buying it at first, he asked for the price of the island. It's about £3 million. With nothing to lose, he bid £150,000 and the couple were kicked out of the villa. Returning to London, he learned that the owner of Necker Island, an English gentleman, needed to close the sale of the island quickly in order to buy another building for £200,000. So Branson raised the price to £175,000 and the deal ended at the unbelievable price of £180,000. From pocketing a free vacation, Branson bought an entire island for a fraction of the price offered. But the purchase wasn't the only fruit of the trip. The Virgin Islands is where Branson built his next empire, Virgin Airlines. When his flight back to Puerto Rico was canceled, he rented a plane for $2,000 and wrote on a blackboard the words Virgin Airways, $39 a flight to Puerto Rico. The emergence of CDs and the signing of unknown but potential artists made Virgin Records a huge success. Despite having the Sex Pistols and several new wave bands to break into the music market, Virgin couldn't make a huge profit. In 1980, Virgin Music lost £900,000. Branson remains determined to stick with signing new artists, such as Simple Minds, The Human League and Phil Collins, much to the chagrin of the CFO when he realizes Virgin is spending money it doesn't have on paid to unknown artists. The CFO left and sold a 40% stake to Branson, making him the 100% owner of a company that was on the verge of bankruptcy. What no one expected, however, was the popularity of compact disc, abbreviated as CD. Because of its success, people started buying CD-recorded albums. Virgin was able to sell their catalogs on CDs, and Mike Oldfield's first record, which sold very well with CDs, helped Virgin regain financial balance. Plus, Branson's faith in talent spotter and music mentor Simon Draper eventually paid off, as virtually all of the bands he brought in turned out to be hugely profitable. For example, the Human League's third album, titled Dare, reached number 1 in the UK charts, having sold 1 million copies in the UK and 3 million worldwide. Plus, the list of young artists Virgin has brought into the music industry, brand new artists, seems endless. Phil Collins, Boy George, Culture Club, Simple Minds, XTC or Heaven 17, all of them were really successful. Virgin became an unrivaled freelance brand, making more money than they ever expected, with £50 million in sales, total profits of £2 million in 1982 and skyrocketing to £11 million. In 1983, investing in the airline business nearly bankrupted Virgin, but Branson brought Virgin Airways up. With a joke that used to have the same name, Virgin Airways, in the late 70s, Branson was excited about the idea of founding an airline. So in 1984, when an American lawyer called Randolph Fields to ask Branson if he was interested in running a transatlantic airline, he was ready for a new challenge. The manager opposed the idea. Still, Branson was adamant, arguing that if they could lease just one plane for a year, they could limit how much they could lose, and possibly pull out of the project if it failed. After 2 months of careful negotiations, Boeing finally agreed to let Branson lease a jumbo for a year. However, they lacked flight permits, time slots to squeeze in, and advertising to install a ticketing system. In order to obtain a permit, a proficiency test needs to be held with the officer at the airport. It was during that inspection that the plane, uninsured due to lack of permits, crashed into a flock of birds. As a result, one of the engines exploded and the test aborted. And Branson was in trouble again. The first commercial flight is due in 2 days, and he still needs a license and an engine, a total cost of around £600,000. After installing new engines, obtaining a license and flying on Virgin's flight, Branson realized that £600,000 had exceeded Virgin's $3 million quota, and that the bank would not be willing to increase it. Virgin is on the verge of bankruptcy. To get out of this situation, Branson collected money from his stores around the world. The money was enough to keep Virgin Airways afloat, and the airline became legitimate and successful under the leadership of Branson, who had just turned 33. Despite facing many life events, Branson successfully sailed across the Atlantic Ocean in record time. In 1984, Ted Tolman was looking for an investor to finance the cost of a boat he was building to cross the Atlantic Ocean at record speed to surpass the British Blue Ribbon Trophy. Branson was excited to sponsor. He realized that taking part in a cruise across the Atlantic Ocean and hitting a record would attract the attention of his airline. With an experienced sailor, Che Blythe, on their team, Tolman and Branson set out for New York and set out for England to beat the then record, 3 days, 10 days, hours and 40 minutes. But after 3 days at sea and only 60 miles to go, they encountered a storm, which tore open the hull and caused the Virgin Challenger to sink. The crew members had to use lifebuoys and were eventually rescued by a tourist boat. Surprisingly, on this very ship Branson also saw his newborn son for the first time. One of the passengers had a copy of the Evening Standard, a free British daily magazine. On the cover has a picture of Branson's baby. Still determined to win the Blue Ribbon, Che and Branson decided they should build a single-hull boat rather than two-hull. The boat was called the Virgin Atlantic Challenger II, and it sailed to New York in 1986 in a second attempt to win the prize. However, another accident occurred when the filter of the fuel pump became clogged, causing the engine to clog. Furthermore, they need to be replaced every 2 hours. Because of this obstacle, they have no chance of reaching the UK in time to beat the current record. Cleverly, Branson went to Downing Street and spoke to the right person. An RAF plane had been authorized to take the new filters and drop them on the boat. With those new filters, they were able to keep the engine running, finishing the trip in 3 days, 8 hours and 31 minutes, setting a new world record for a 3,000-mile journey. Humanity in person. Branson. During the war in Kuwait, Branson brought aid to Jordan, and later rescued British hostages in Baghdad. In 1990, Saddam Hussein attacked Kuwait. Saddam was a leader who left many conflicting views. Western media depicts him as a ruthless dictator, while many Arabs and other countries of the world. The Third World considers him a soldier who dared to oppose the great power of the US and the West. This event turned the world upside down and caused the price of aviation oil to double, from 75 cents to $1.50 a gallon. When Branson was about to drop his son off at school, his phone rang. It was a call from Queen Noor of Jordan, whom he had met and befriended on a previous expedition. Over 150,000 refugees flew from Iraq to Jordan without blankets or water to drink. And although the Red Cross went to distribute water, the Jordanian government still requested about 100,000 blankets to prevent a disaster. Branson and his staff managed to locate and fly to Jordan with 100,000 warm blankets. Contacting the Red Cross, foreign offices and overseas development offices, they collected 30,000 warm blankets and a few more from UNICEF. In addition, Sainsbury, British supermarket chain, agreed to donate several tons of rice. To get these supplies to Jordan, Branson and the crew decided to remove all the seats from a Boeing 747 and load it with more than 40,000 warm blankets, aid medicine and tons of rice. On the way back to the UK, they also picked up people stranded in Jordan. But there are still a number of Britons who are still being held in Baghdad and held hostage. Branson telephoned the King of Jordan to negotiate a deal with Saddam Hussein. In exchange for medical aid, Hussein should release all children, women, and the sick. On October 23, Branson and a Virgin volunteer landed in Baghdad, entering the most dangerous airspace in the world in a commercial jet. They arrived safely and were allowed to take most of the hostages with them. However, they were forced to leave the men at the airport. Only a few weeks later it stopped. The best motto to follow is, if you don't take risks, you won't get anything done. Crashed while crossing the Pacific Ocean in a hot air balloon. Crossing the Pacific Ocean in a hot air balloon was a fascinating challenge for Branson. He had intended to do this with Pearl Lindström in 1989, but their hot air balloon tore off shortly before taking off. In January 1990, they met in Japan for a second attempt to cross the Pacific Ocean by ballooning into the narrow 200 miles per hour atmosphere. Their goal is to reach California in 2 days to win the world record for fastest speed, and become the first person to cross the Pacific Ocean in a hot air balloon. 7 hours passed, and it was time for them to drop the empty oil tanks to reduce weight and increase flight speed. However, due to a technical error, they not only dropped the empty tanks but also dropped 2 more fuel tanks. Now they only have half the fuel left to go 6,000 miles. That's still not the worst. They lost contact with the control center again soon after hearing the terrifying sound of the storm coming. They cannot connect with the outside world. Fortunately, Branson and his friends were flying in the narrow atmosphere, and thanks to the wind they were able to travel 170 miles per hour. However, a small amount of propane leaked, causing the balloon's shell to catch on fire. Quickly, Lindström and Branson lifted the balloon to an altitude of 40,000 feet, 1 foot equals 0.3048000 m, where there was not enough oxygen and the fire was extinguished. After the fire goes out, the radio works again, establishing communication with the control center. However, they heard another bad news: the narrow air current had turned and would blow them back to Japan if they were unable to descend to 18,000 feet, where another wind was blowing northward, heading north. About the North Pole. After nearly 48 hours, they finally landed in Canada, 3,000 miles from their original destination, a hot air balloon flight with a greater average distance and speed than anyone has ever reached. Okay. British Airways used dirty tricks to compete with Virgin Airways, but in the end they had to accept an apology. In the 1990s, Branson was enjoying the peak of his career, but his success in aviation was not appreciated by British Airways, the traditional British transport channel. The firm began campaigns to kick him out of the industry. They even assembled a group with the sole purpose of sabotaging Branson and his company. BA not only contacted Virgin customers, offered them cheaper flights and claimed that Virgin flights were cancelled or sold out, but also hacked into Virgin's data systems to get booking information of this airline. In addition, they contracted several private detectives and publicists to investigate Branson, his family and his company to ruin the businessman's image. The proof is that after seeing a TV documentary about the hostile relationship between BA and Virgin, a Virgin customer contacted Branson's office and reported that she received numerous calls by people claiming to be an employee of Virgin. They called to inform her that she had to cancel her flight and asked if she would like to book a Concorde flight the next day. BA has denied any involvement. Even with this information and some former BA employees willing to verify, the offices responsible for the rivalry that exists between the two airlines refuse to acknowledge the campaign with such dirty actions. Just when Branson and his team found a hard drive containing all of the conversations between BA executives revealed that the manager made the decision to take down Virgin, Branson and his lawyers, he was confident enough to take BA to court. With such clear evidence in hand, BA immediately changed tactics, from outright denial to conciliation. It was perhaps the largest ever fine, as BA had to pay £500,000 to Branson and £110,000 to Virgin Atlantic as compensation for individual and corporate defamation. More than that, they have to apologize and admit their mistakes in public. Conclude. You can still have fun in business, if you are brave enough to face any challenge and bold enough to overcome any obstacle in your way.